Daniel Suarez. He's been there a year and a half. Finally gets his first win. Kind of happy for him to a point. It still sucks that Joe Gibbs cars are the ones winning the races. I suppose you don't see that parity. Plus, it's Toyota, and not a lot of people do enjoy Toyota being in the sport. Maybe it's the team that they love to hate, or the brand that they love to hate. But for him, kind of happy for him. A guy that gave up a career in open wheel racing to come into NASCAR, and maybe didn't see the success that he thought he would. Although it hasn't been that bad, but when you're on the best team that's been dominating the Xfinity Series, for the past year and a half that he's been here, that he finally gets his first win, and he's came close so many times before. So it's kind of cool to see him win. I know a lot of people that were happy to see him win, so that was pretty neat. But the Dream Late Model race, it was pretty good racing. Scott Bloomquist, he was kind of the big story last year when he failed. He failed his failed his weigh-in. He was 25 pounds overweight, so got disqualified from going from first to 28th. And I think it cost him about $93,000. Still a $7,000 payday, ain't too bad. But for Bloomquist, that's probably peanuts. But ended up missing the late model show out of the 22nd running. It was his third time that he missed a feature for that event. So that was kind of crazy. And for us, for the wife and I, seeing Jimmy Mars, one of her hometowns, she'll say, ends up qualifying for the race, and for a guy who's 47 years old and probably towards the end of his late model racing career, and although Scott Bloomquist is probably right around the same age, I think, and you can see how long guys like Steve Kinser last in the sport too. So it could last a few more years longer. Don't get me wrong there, but I will say that that it's cool to see him get in, and he made the pass on basically made the winning pass on Scott Bloomquist, and so that was pretty cool to see him take that away from Scott Bloomquist, kind of almost like I guess you could say David beating the Goliath in that moment, and even though he didn't run very well in the late model in the feature, him getting in the show, probably a pretty good payday. I think he probably ended up around 20th or probably 25th out of 28 cars. Still, I think right around what he finished last year, so it was pretty good for him. But then going on to the win, I think Dennis Erbs was the guy who won from Illinois, first Illinois driver to win the late model dream race, and the heartbreaking thing that almost happened to him when he came out of turn 4, probably less than 50 yards away from seeing the checkered. The caution flag came out, so they had to have a green-white checkered finish, and he had a car that was not very good on the short runs, and but yet I think he did anything he could to make sure he probably borderline jumped the start if he just didn't flat out do it. But hell, when $100,000 on the line, and when you've seen that checkered flag in your sight, he could probably see in the car, and it's probably hard for him to see the flag man. That had to be a heartbreak, or that had to hurt there. So he did end up getting the win. So that's pretty cool to see too. But then again, going to Sunday, the only bad part of it was Joey Logano did win that race, but I heard there's conflicting things. Dale Jr. was kind of neutral on it, said we were talking too much about packages. A.G. Allmendinger didn't like it. Guys like Brad Keselowski loved it. And I still think, again, talking last week about my optimism about the direction NASCAR is going, or with their willingness to change these packages in the middle of the year, that they're a little bit more up on things. They're keeping up with it. And it was pretty refreshing to see, and I thought it brought a little more excitement. You did see cars kind of after a while. You kind of, I think, had to pay attention. I think I think Keselowski's analysis of it was pretty accurate as as far as saying, if the cars will drive the same for most of the race, but it would go from handling good, doing exactly what you wanted it to just getting away from you in a split second. And I think that's the biggest difference, is that you got to be up on it. You can't. I think with the more downforce of the package, I guess you'll say, what we saw last year when they added more downforce, I think the problem is that the cars pretty much drove themselves. I mean, it was as close as maybe saying that it's as close as driving a passenger car as a race car would probably be, as far as the stock car is concerned too. That you could probably have one hand on the wheel and the other hand on the roll bar, just having a Sunday afternoon drive. But I think you have to pay a little bit more attention when the cars can snap on you any moment. I think you've seen that a couple times. Happened to Trevor Bayne getting into Jimmy Johnson, Chris Buescher getting into Dale Earnhardt Jr. And a lot of the big names that kind of got taken out, and that race, and then had a little bit more parity than what we normally see. And a lot of it's because of those big guys getting knocked out, like Johnson, Ryan Blaney. That had a good run going too, that had taken away from him. So I think that had a parity there. But I was talking too. This year in NASCAR again. I think I did talk about this a little bit last week. Has still probably been one of the best years that we've seen in a long time, and we're still probably not seeing that parity that we've seen back in what we call the NASCAR glory days of this Generation X or whatever you want to call it. Back in the late 90s, early 2000s, when you'd see different winners, and any given Sunday anyone could win a race. I don't think we're quite there yet, or if we will get there, I don't know. I mean, we still could be talking like we were talking with the NBA earlier. They'll make the journey more exciting, but the results will still be the same. But it's still somewhat refreshing, when we've seen guys like A.J. Allmendinger able to muscle out a second-place finish at Martinsville, Matt DiBenedetto getting a sixth-place finish at Bristol. Seeing some of these different guys getting a chance to get top fives, top tens, or whatnot, and maybe even contending for a win. I guess you can say A.J. Allmendinger came pretty close at Martinsville, but maybe something that this package will maybe equalize things out a little bit, because you could have the best car and just be a little bit under in talent. Guys like maybe the guys at Richard Childress Racing, they have the B-list equipment, but you have a guy like Ryan Newman who hasn't won since he left Stewart-Haas Racing back in 2013. Is it him? Is it him getting up there in age, or is it the equipment? So I think once we see this come back at Kentucky in a few weeks, I think maybe you'll see some more parity even coming up in a couple weeks. So that should be pretty exciting. I think it's promising, and the racing itself, the side-by-side action, the passing, mainly it was on restarts and stuff like that. But Michigan, back in the NASCAR glory days, one of the most boring races I think I could ever recall watching was back in the glory days in 1999, when Dale Jarrett, I think, led every lap, no cautions. It was a very boring race. It was terrible. So Michigan sometimes doesn't provide the best side-by-side racing throughout the event, but I think Sunday's race was interesting, not exciting, but interesting. I would have liked to see, maybe the green flag come out at the end. Chase Elliott, getting that shot to catch Joey Logano. I think he had a shot to catch him. He just wasn't as good on restarts as Joey Logano was. So, we'll see what happens when that package rolls out in Kentucky in a few weeks. As they just finished up testing earlier this week, 2-day test at Kentucky. I know a lot of the drivers were excited about the changes they just recently made at Kentucky, as far as adding a little bit more banking in the corners. The first couple days I didn't think they were leery because of the new package with the low downforce. It was like a little bit more like driving on ice. But once they got the racing groove, once they got rubber on the track, I think it improved a lot for them. So again, the NASCAR Sprint Cup Series is off this week. The Xfinity Series and the Truck Series are going to be at Iowa this weekend. You can see our blog. You can see how the points are shaking out. Still first and second, not quite there, but of course ground can be gained and lost in a hurry. You can check that out on our blog at sportstalk920.blogspot.com. And again, you can also check our Facebook too. Kind of introducing all this stuff back here since on Spreaker, this is a kind of a new outlet for us here. Check that out. And that's on facebook.com/ST920. One last thing I want to talk about. We got 4 minutes. This is about a half-hour show here. Again, we're just kind of dabbling in the Spreaker format here. See how I like it and see how well this goes. But just got finished up. I believe it was the last episode. I also have to look, but the O.J. Simpson. I think I did watch 5 because you can watch all of the. O.J. Simpson Made in America is on Watch ESPN. I think they're up to number 4 if you watch them live on ESPN. And pretty interesting. It has that kind of the Making a Murder type format to it. I don't know if that was what kind of inspired this. Probably Making a Murder a little bit that came out last winter. And probably also a little bit of the that O.J. Simpson, the American crime story, the O.J. Simpson murder trial that was on FX. I think a little bit of that kind of inspired this story, and I can't say for certain, but it just kind of seems coincidental that it's all kind of flows together, and kind of the parallels that Making a Murderer had with the O.J. Simpson story, and even with some of the testing that they used in the trial was the first time that they've used this in a trial since the O.J. Simpson trial and Making a Murder or whatever. I can't remember the exact test. I'm not that big of a crime geek, but I know the wife was kind of surprised, or I'm not surprised, but kind of like, oh man, you're watching another thing on O.J. Simpson, and it's like, back when it happened. I know me and Dan Casper were talking about it on Twitter. Kind of remembering where I was when the O.J. verdict came out. We were in 4th grade. I remember we were all in the lunchroom, and I was pumping my fist because I'm like, oh yeah, I'm a sports fan. Football player got off. I was excited, but and kind of just reliving some of the things that I was probably too young to remember back at that time, and just kind of what he was before the murders, and how good he had it and how hard he fell, and even after the trial, of just how much he changed, maybe because of what he either, I'm 99% sure he did, or something that he got basically publicly convicted of doing. Now spending the rest of his probably life in prison in Las Vegas for trying to steal the stuff back, and that kind of went awry. But I would encourage people to check that out. It's fairly interesting, especially if you're a sports fan. You're fascinated maybe by the O.J. trial. If you want to learn something about the O.J. trial, if you're too young to remember that, and I don't publicize, I don't endorse, I guess, a lot of what ESPN does, but that was a pretty interesting program. I'd encourage you to check that out. O.J. Simpson, Made in America, on Watch ESPN. You can watch them all 5 before they air on ESPN. But with that, we got about 35 seconds left here. The Spreaker thing's all right. I hope we can get somehow get Rudy on here. So we'll see how that goes. But until next time, you can follow us all week long at ST920 at Twitter.com, on our Facebook page at Facebook.com/ST920, and of course on our blog at SportsTalk920.blogspot.com. Until next time, I'm Mike Goodman. Thank you all for listening to this week's episode of Sports Talk 920. Good night now.